Recording in progress.
No.
Good evening, everyone. My name is April Susanna Varki. I'm an associate research at CPPR, the Center for Public Policy Research. I welcome you all to the virtual launch of CPPR Academy's website and our webinar on changing paradigm of education in 2022. CPPR is an independent think tank dedicated to in-depth research and scientific analysis with the objective of delivering actionable ideas that could transform society. Our engagement in public policy that began in 2004 has initiated open dialogue, policy changes, and institutional transformation in the areas of urban reform, livelihood, education, health, governance, law, and international relations and security. Our training and development arm, CPPR Academy, has reached an exciting milestone today. This new year, we are launching an independent website for CPPR Academy. We are glad you accepted our invitation to join us for this virtual launch. With this, I'd like to call upon Professor Casey Abraham, Academic Director and Advisor at CPPR. Abraham sir retired as Professor of Political Science from Sacred Heart College, Kochi. He is an orator and writer of contemporary regional and national political and social issues. I hand over the floor to you, Abraham sir.
Can you listen?
Yes, sir, you're
Yes,
audible.
sir, we can hear you.
Okay. I could have been there to be in good spirit and to make you in better spirit. The launching of the CPPR Academy website, I think, is another milestone in the glorious 17-year-old history of CPPR. The CPPR Academy was formally started in 2012, though innumerable academic programs have been conducted as part of its key activities since 2005. So this is the 10th year of the Academy. Since 2012, we have trained over 300 interns from the country and from across the world. It being a global program, the center had students from London School of Economics and Politics, King's College, University of Michigan, Paris University, etc. The Maiden residential training program was the finishing school for law graduates conducted in 2010 and 12. This was a 3-day course on public policy for 35 selected students from prestigious law institutes of our country. Our flagship program called Global Policy School has successfully conducted since 2012. Under this program, we trained 81 participants from 37 countries on the nuances of policymaking, aided with case studies and the sharing of real-time research experiences. We are esteemed to inform that 4 of our Global Policy School alumni have been elected to the national legislatures of Sri Lanka, Poland, Kazakhstan, and Malaysia. As part of Academy's public policy awareness initiative, a national essay competition was held to generate critical thinking on public policy among the youth. CPPR was also privileged to partner with the University of Virginia in its Semester at Sea program. The center hosted the students from that university in Kochi and trained them on policy making and conducted classes on Indian history, culture, politics and governance, and economy. The Academy is also entrusted with the conduct of quarterly lecture series or seminars, and now it is called webinar, on topics of contemporary relevance. The CPPR Academy ventured into the online space in 2020. The team successfully organized 6 online certificate courses, training over 250 participants. On this occasion, I have to make a special reference of and express profound sense of gratitude to the faculty of research scholars and career professionals. They provided their exceptional and committed service as resource and training personnel. I should make special mention of Professor Dr. Martin Patrick, Mr. Devi Prasad, Ms. Rashmi Ramamurthy, and Professor Rahul V. Kumar. I am sure this website would become a dynamic and vibrant platform that will be a globally vast, referred to, and demanded for different facets of public policy and training. So thank you, all the best.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I invite Dr. Shakila Shamsu, Advisor Special Education Policies at CPPR, to launch the Academy's website.
Thank you, April, and greetings to everyone gathered here today. Dr. Dhanuraj, Professor Abraham, I can see former Vice Chancellor of Central University of Kerala, Dr. Gopakumar, and many other advisors of CPPR and other participants who are gathered here today. It's been a long journey for CPPR, and I think today is a proud day when the CPPR Academy has completed a decade. So it's a milestone of achievement in this journey. And I wish the team of CPPR Academy, as well as the CPPR, for having reached this milestone in their journey. And I also hope that the academy which has done a lot of work in promoting not just academics, but also ensuring that we bring the globe together in a learning paradigm or in a learning ecosystem, will still continue to be change makers and enter innovative fields of new knowledge and new partnerships, which will enrich the academy as well as those who are coming to the academy in achieving their goals. On this occasion, it gives me immense pleasure on behalf of the CPPR as a part of that fraternity to declare the launch of the CPPR Academy's website. Congratulations.
Thank you, ma'am. I now invite Dr. Gopakumar for felicitation. He was a former Vice Chancellor of Central University of Kerala and is a faculty to CPPR Academy.
Thank you. In fact, I was waiting for the lecture from Dr. Shakila Shamsu. I still look forward for that. This is a very momentous occasion that CPPR is able to launch its own website. I'm sure many goals are to be attained in future, which the academic commitment of the leadership of Dr. Dhanuraj and Dr. Abraham will enable the institution to go ahead. Actually, during the days of pandemic, CPPR is doing a good job by bringing together various scholars and debating, and also enabling us to be connected on very contemporary and lively themes. Actually, I am witnessing this program sitting far away in Dubai, but I thought that this is a wonderful opportunity, and let the CPPR continue the same efforts in future as well, and continue the efforts in multidisciplinary areas of social sciences, humanities, and other branches too, and so that we can make the theme of intellectual growth very lively. And today's theme also is very important. Let us see how the paradigm of 2022 education goes up in the years to come. And this is the second year after the national education policy has been implemented. Long way to go, high ideals, but a lot of challenges too. I hope the government of India will be able to achieve the goals and also help the states to reach on a similar and comparative level in the development of higher education. Even in a state like Kerala, where it is said to be have higher education, but even among the South Indian states, Kerala is lagging behind Tamil Nadu as far as GER is concerned. So this means that every state has to do its own work and achieve 50% GER, the higher education level, in another 10 years is going to be a very big challenge. And there are many other tasks as part of national education policy, which I'm sure the governments will be interested, and government of India will have a great way in supporting them, including the National Research Fund, and also earmarking 6% of the GDP share for education. Thank you very much, and I wish all the best for CPPR in their attempt and academic commitment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Team CPPR is excited to bring forth today's discussion on changing paradigm of education in 2022 with Dr. Shakila Shamsu and Dr. D. Dhanuraj. Dr. Shakila Shamsu was formerly Officer on Special Duty, New Education Policy, in the Department of Higher Education, Ministry of Education. She has been the Secretary to the Committee to draft National Education Policy. She was also the Nodal Officer of the flagship Government of India scheme of National Mission on Teachers and Teaching, New Initiatives of Leadership for Academicians Program, Annual Refresher Program in Teaching, and Faculty Induction Programs were implemented during her tenure. Prior to this, she held senior positions such as Officer on Special Duty 12th Plan in the Ministry of Education and Joint Advisor Education in the Planning Commission. Her core areas cover education planning and policy making, teacher education, ICT, and open and distance learning and inclusive education. Her academic career spans over 39 years in teaching and academics in the University of Mumbai and IGNOU, and over 14 years in Government of India. A warm welcome to you, ma'am. This discussion will be moderated by Chairman of CPPR, Dr. D. Dhanuraj. Dhanu sir is the chairman of the Board of Trustees and the Chief Executive of CPPR, of which he is also one of the founding members. His core areas of expertise are in urban transport and infrastructure, education, health, livelihood, and election analysis. He has worked with different governments, international and national NGOs, corporate houses, development organizations, and educational institutions. Without further ado, I hand over the proceedings to Dhanu sir for his introductory remarks and carrying the discussion forward.
Thank you, April. And I'm really excited to have a dedicated website, a CPPR Academy website. As we are celebrating 10 years of CPPR Academy, I think it's a matter of pride and privilege and pleasure for all of us to come up with this new website and a dedicated website. In fact, that website will feature various upcoming events, programs, courses. And I also take this opportunity to thank all the scholars, mentors, faculty who supported us, nurtured our dreams in all these years, helped us to grow, participated in our curriculum preparation, came to Kochi to train our participants. I thank all of them. I wish they continue their support, and we will be going global. I'm sure we will be going global, especially with this online platform that everybody is now familiar with. We have big dreams and big ideas in the coming years. So before we start this conversation, I request my colleague Angela Cicely Joseph. She is leading the CPPR Academy team to present a website to the participants here, the different sessions of the website, and also what are the immediate plans from CPPR Academy. Angela, please.
Yeah, we are having some technical. We are just trying to connect with Angela.
Sorry, there's a slight internet problem, so Angela will come in later, sir.
Sure.
You can continue with the discussion.
Sure. When she's ready, let us know. So warm welcome to all the participants who have logged in for today's discussion from across the country and from across the world. We look forward to engage you with enriching discussions on various topics that we have chosen for today's thematic area. You can put your suggestions to our speaker by typing your question on the chat box below. And I will be posting those questions. I will be sharing those questions to the speaker. Today's discussion would be of 4 parts. First part will cover skill development. Second will cover widening digital divide and learning gaps. Third one will be on multidisciplinary curriculum. And fourth one would be on policy challenges coming up in the education sector. We would like to hear from each one of you regarding your concerns or your feedback or your suggestions to the policymakers in this country. We also have an opinion poll that will be posted on this screen. You can click on the options that we are giving, and then we will be sharing the results. The reason why we are sharing a poll here is to understand your views on these topics that we are going to discuss today. So, ma'am, before we go to the poll, I invite you to share your opening remarks on changing paradigm of education 2022.
Thank you, Dr. Dhanu, and again, a warm good afternoon to all of you. I think in a very contemporary era that we are living in, we need to really look at the social sector in a much broader perspective. And I'm happy that the CPPR has brought up this topic today for discussion. Ideally, it is not just a changing paradigm, it's a lot of changing paradigms that are happening simultaneously. And while we are trying to put that in the perspective of 2022, I'd like to tell to the participants that this is to be understood as the harbinger of change that is likely to remain for about nearly 5, 10, 15, or 20 years. And the 4 pertinent topics that we have taken up today are just to sort of contextualize or situate that within the broad recommendations of the National Education Policy 2020, which Professor Gopakumar has rightly said is something that all stakeholders, both the Government of India, the state governments, the higher education institutions, parents, teachers, students, researchers, all need to come together in trying to ensure that some of the changes visualized within the National Education Policy start getting implemented on ground. While also trying to put into the context that any policy that is brought out is to a great extent reaping the benefits only if it is implemented in the true spirit in which the policy recommendations have been made. And the Ministry of Education in the 2 departments of school education and higher education, you have an implementation plan as regards the Department of School Education and Literacy. And it's there as a document titled Sarthak, which is already there in the public domain, and a lot of initiatives relating to a robust ECC program, addressing the learning gaps through a foundational literacy and numeracy mission called Nipun Bharat, have already been launched. Interestingly, NDR, which is a national digital education architecture that is called by that acronym, has also been launched. 4 new curricula are in the works of getting formulated. The National Curriculum and Pedagogical Framework for ECCE, the National Curriculum Framework for School Education, the National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education, and the National Curriculum Framework for Adult Education. The steering committee for this is also being headed by the chairman of the committee that drafted the National Education Policy, esteemed Dr. K. Kasturiranganji. And the states have been asked to prepare their own state curriculum frameworks, taking into account the fact that education as a subject is in the concurrent list. A national professional standards for teachers is in the works. The draft national professional standards for teachers is there in the public domain. A lot of open house discussions are happening to invite stakeholder views. And many changes are already in the works with relation to setting up the Parak body, which is for rationalizing assessments, and other changes that are promoting toy-based pedagogy and so on. In higher education, parallelly, there is, as of now, a plan of action is not there on by the department, but that does not mean that the implementation has not been initiated. I am sure all of you just read about a couple of days back that the Academic Bank of Credits, which will promote the student mobility and the idea of a flexible undergraduate 3/4-year program, is sort of to be onboarded by all the institutions. Initially, it was supposed to be for only the top 100, and ranking was being stated as a criteria, but now they have scaled it up and they have said all higher education institutions can onboard themselves so that the students can take benefit of the academic bank of credits. The notification, or rather the draft regulations for the joint and twinning and dual programs as part of internationalization of higher education is also up and there on the UGC website. The All India Council for Technical Education has already initiated a lot of reforms with the eligibility criteria to join engineering programs, as well as offering engineering programs in regional languages. NRF is already there. Very recently, we had the NEET, that is the National Education Alliance for Technology, coming up in 2021, which is a one-stop portal for digital education and leveraging digital education into mainstream education. A lot is taking place on skill-based higher education, on promoting open and distance learning, as well as for looking at issues relating to broad-basing research in the university system. So there are a lot of, I would say, initiatives that have already been taken, though there may not be a formal implementation plan. Unlike school education, which is driven through the state governments, in higher education, a lot of the reforms, curricular, academic, and so on, really need to be driven by the institutions themselves as autonomous institutions. And therefore, to think that we might have to wait for a formalized program of action must not act as a deterrent from higher education institutions coming forward to embrace the reforms which will create new paradigms going forward in ensuring that our youth have the right kind of knowledge, skills, and competencies. I think I'll stop here in the opening remarks and wait to hear what has been the feedback, or rather the opinion polls that the participants have exercised.
Sure, ma'am. We are getting audience polls poll counted now, and I'll come to that, ma'am, in a minute while we are recording the results. So those who are not seeing the opinion poll, please see your chat box. The question is given and the options are also given. Please mark your your suggestion there. We will be discussing your suggestions in this discussion. Ma'am, the first question in the opinion poll, what we have asked was about the skill development. Now I have results with me. The result is 71.4% have responded life skills like mental health, self-care, time management, integrity, and perseverance. That gets the highest ranking among all the options that we are given. And vocational training, I hope there is not significant number. There's not any significant number I could see from the poll. Second option of 21st century skills like communication, collaboration, teamwork, scientific temper, critical thinking. 25% of our participants say that they should be given priority. The option of life skills like mental health, self-care, prioritizing and organizing skills, time management, integrity, and perseverance, that is 71.4%. That is got the highest rank. So contrary to what I thought, because we are, probably to contrary to most of my colleagues would have thought, the priority is given to life skills like mental health, self-care, prioritizing and organizing skills, and time management, not for teamwork, collaboration, scientific temper, critical thinking. I don't know whether it has got a, this has also been influenced by COVID, and many of us are sitting at home and kids are sitting at home and learning. So the importance of self-care and mental health gets priority. Is it because of that? I don't know. So ma'am, your comments, please.
So I think the options also had something on technical and generic skills. Did we ask them that? Where are
Yes. Yes. So that is also less. That is also less.
Okay. So what we commonly perceive that we would have a large number of participants talking about the need for technical and generic skills along with vocational skills has got lesser priority compared to the life skills, and which is the topmost, and
Yes.
followed by the 21st century skills.
Right.
Understandably, Dr. Dhanuraj, it is very interesting.
Ma'am, I just want to make a point here that people are still voting. So, I mean, this is the result. This is like a exit poll kind of result analysis. So, people are still voting. So, I don't know if this is the final result, but we can go back to that result after some time. But
Yeah,
it shows you gives us some trends now.
Yes. So the reason why I was, when talking about the format of this particular discussion, also keen on having this audience poll, is that it would engage them as part of this discussion that is going around, rather than just listening to our views. So I'm happy that like an election analysis, Professor Gopakumar sitting there as the best speciologist around, when we understand trends for voting a government, vis-a-vis understanding on matters relating to education, how people would react might be quite different from what we generally perceive here. So let me come to the context of skill development and why in the need, and I'll come to the reason why the poll may have come out in this manner, but let me first largely talk about the need for skill development. India as a country today, you're aware, has committed itself to the SDG goals. And one of the targets is on addressing the need for technical and vocational education and training. And a recent UNESCO report, which talks about the status of vocational education, has highlighted many points where there is a need for integrating that within the mainstream education, because skills have always been falling between the stools of mainstream education, and therefore very less attention being given to that. And it is also arising from the fact that we need to look at the demographic profile of this country today. And as a country which has the youngest population in the world, with one of the lowest median age population of 29 years, which is likely to remain till about 2036 or so, I think that there is a need to underscore the importance of skilling within higher education and skilling within school education. So the National Education Policy 2020 very clearly highlighted this aspect. And from class 6 onwards, we are talking in terms of having exposure to arts and crafts, 10 days bagless days where children can intern with artisans and craftsmen to understand the nuances in terms of the respect for labor force. And it is also to be very clarified here that many thought that we were trying to create a divide in the society where the less benefited parts of the society, segments of the society, would go for vocational and the elite would go in for the mainstream education. No way, because the policy talks about integration and holistic development. And so skills, academics go together, and knowledge, skills, and competencies work in tandem with each other for the individual's holistic development. In that context, the policy recommended skills as part of the curricular framework to be integrated right from the school education onwards, as part of skills that teachers need to acquire in their professional standards for teachers. So the NPST lists out not just the teaching skills, but other skills that teachers need to have so that they deliver there as effective teachers. And in higher education, the current BWOC program, which is being offered across the university system, needs to be becoming more multidisciplinary, where vocational education will also coexist along with other disciplines. And to look at this entire architecture, we have talked in terms of a National Council for Integration of Vocational Education. Now, while that might be the recommendation, the need for life skills education arises because you can have technical skills, you can have generic skills, you can have the 21st century skills, and you can also have the socio-emotional skills. And all these four are equally important. And in this current poll, if many of us have felt that there is a need for life skills education, time management, handling stress, it's because more than the intelligence quotient, today it is the emotional quotient that actually contributes to the leveraging of any knowledge that you have acquired. A healthy mind resides in a healthy body. And today, there is so much of stress that has come in because of the technology invasion and the isolation caused by COVID, and very low levels of socio-emotional skills, where peer interaction and the 4 pillars of the UNESCO report, learning to live together and to live with others, sustainable living, these things are almost becoming non-existent, more or less. So what you see when you read a headline that a child has played some particular game, I've forgotten the names of those high-tech games that the children play, and therefore hung himself as trying to achieve a milestone in that particular game. These are all outlets that children are trying to do because of very low self-esteem and success being seen as how they perform on social media. And I think even yesterday there was a news in the Kerala channels of a person actually being from a university beaten up and maybe even maimed and killed because of some like that was given on Facebook. Is that not showing? And also a lot of drugs and substance abuse. Is that not alarm bells for us to understand that our youngsters, if they want to learn, firstly, they should also have the socio-emotional skills. That is one part of it, with a strong self-esteem, with a need to make them understand through the education system. And that's where the role of the teacher changes completely, to become a counselor, to become a facilitator, to feel as an equal partner. So skilling in learning how to handle time, handling stress, ensuring physical fitness and mental fitness, developing emotional quotient along with cognitive development, problem-solving techniques along with good communication skills, collaborating and working together through project-based activities, because I am sure all of us has managed with some extent of our understanding of management. Today, companies look at individuals who are called T-shaped personalities in terms of having the depth and the breadth, which means both the cognitive and the emotional coming together. And that is why when we talk of skill development, let us move away from the utilitarian view of just employment oriented to talk in terms of looking at entrepreneurial skills, becoming innovators, in a certain sense, heightened creativity that needs to be encouraged. And all that we are seeing because of COVID, the fact that we are using technology and the acceleration of technology has opened up so many avenues for skilling of different kinds, including the fact that skilling itself as part of vocational education and the science, technology, and innovation policy, we are saying that the skill development should use technology for better instrumentation, for very many mechanized activities through high-end technology and cutting-edge technology, using including the Internet of Things and the artificial intelligence, robotics, and so on, so that the skill development that we are talking of is not looking at a 19th century skill development, but moving towards 21st century skill development. So I think I would really be happy to hear from you, Dr. Dhanuraj, as someone who's been with the CPPR on many other sectors of health and urban transport and so on. There are a lot of skill gaps that are there, and which I think the academic institutions should live up to the expectations of meeting those skill gaps.
Yes, ma'am. Before I comment on or rather I answer your question, I have the final results with us. Life skill like mental health, self-care, prioritizing and organizing skills, time management, integrity, and perseverance. That gets the first in the priority list. 55% of participants, they are looking for that. So earlier it was 71%. Now poll is over, so it's 55%. Then the second priority is 21st century skills like communication, collaboration, teamwork, scientific temper, critical thinking. That is 30%. That is 55 plus 30%, 85%. Then vocational training gets 10%. And the remaining 5% goes to technical and subject matter skills. Ma'am, while I answer your question, I also have a query. Is it good? Can we say that the issue is with self-care or mental health or or the the perseverance and integrity rather than the subject matter? Because you asked me my take on this, my experience even while we recruit people in CPPR. I hear it from various think tanks across the country these days. The subject matter expertise is also lacking. That's something that we find out over a period of time now. And at the same time, when I interview people in the last 24 months, every resume has got some online course. They would have done some courses from Millennium School of Economics. They would have done some courses from MIT, and they are very proud and they actually know. So the thing is, what I observe, they are not looking for certificates anymore. They are actually looking for knowledge, right? But probably we also lack in this issue of prioritizing and organizing skills, time management. I have not seen, in resumes that it comes to me, I have not seen many of the students are attending those kinds of courses. So my question to you is, in higher education, we are discussing higher education, not school education. So my first question to you is, should we do it in the school education level, at the school education level, or should we do it at the higher education level? First thing. Okay. Second is regarding this, the priority that every participant is, giving in terms of mental health. Is it because of rat race at the higher education level, or few opportunities are there and so many graduates are around? And I know that national new education policy is trying to address those issues. So your take on this?
So you may be absolutely right in terms of lack of domain expertise in our young graduates, and that is precisely why the change has to take place. Why did that happen? Is because we have an assessment system that tests memory and therefore rote learning. There is no learning that really takes place in the system that we follow for assessment. And so merely memorizing it without actually applying that in real life context, no projects to relate it to the world of work. You have on the scorecard a nice set of credits, which will hold us to believe that that student has got the domain expertise. Whereas in reality, because they never worked on any projects, and that is why the NEP has said, and all undergraduate programs will have mandatory internships and apprenticeships, depending upon the kind of courses that are being taken. What would be the result of having the internships would be to, without having it as a separate course, all the skills that we are talking about of dealing with it in a problem-solving manner, developing collaborative skills, teamwork, the scientific temper of analytical skills that we call for, these will be sort of, ignited in the students, and their ability to assimilate will become better. So what they really learned, they are able to relate it to the real life, and therefore their understanding and their domain expertise would really be sharpened or honed. So the shift has to be right from the school stage, not to say that the skills that we are talking about will be a part of separate courses, but will be in the manner in which the curricular transaction and the teaching learning takes place, and the activities that the students will be involved in. So the activity-based learning will take care of many of these issues relating to the 21st century skills, as well as the teacher's approach to learning, right from the class 6 and going into the higher education, to look at, flexible approaches rather than looking at students as clones of each other. So what has really happened is that we like to add in our CV, and that is something that we do in our younger days. And subsequently, that CV piece of paper, if someone tells us, any one of us in this audience today, to give a CV today, we will be sitting and grappling to add, to write, and how do we put that? It would go on into pages. So it makes only at that stage, because in the CV also, we are not focusing on other people's skills that are required, leadership skills that are there. Coming forward to, take up humanitarian causes, the social commitment that you have. These are also skills that go to make a complete human being, to become productive citizens, contributing individuals with social commitment. So Dr. Dhanuraj, your feeling that we should have that in the school only is wrong. It's because the way our education system exercised an assessment which did not test any other abilities. Therefore, there was a misplaced priority on merely memorizing and not really learning, actually, therefore, not acquiring the kind of right skills and approaches which would help them to contribute in the knowledge economy. So while the initiation has to start, as we stated, from class 6 onwards, the middle stage onwards in the NEP, it is the approach towards the curricula where these aspects of values, when you say integrity, for example, when you say self-care, for example, being a caring society, being a society which has kindness, which looks at a happiness index, these are all a part of the curricula which are not separate, but which are integrated within each of the courses that are being taught. And when you come to higher education, because you had a product of school education which did not do it in this manner, you are now getting a survey for people coming from higher education that this needs to be provided within the curricula. When they say within the curricula, it cannot come in as separate courses, Dr. Dhan. It has to be integrated within every subject or every discipline that we talk. Values have to be integrated, life skills have to be, socio-emotional skills, the aspect of being a caring society, kindness, respect for elders, all what we are saying, ideally we should have as ideal values that we have, understanding relationships, handling crisis, and handling time effectively. Today, youngsters do not seem to understand the value of time at all. How can you go on looking at a gadget which is not having any human interaction for hours on end, while there are 100 people in a room, absolutely by oneself, has been the result of the adverse effect of technology substituting human beings in terms of real life situations. And therefore, when a real life crisis comes, our children move to either substance abuse or take extreme steps of even ending their own lives, which is, I think, for us as educators, it's a very disturbing trend. And that is why when we talk of skills, yes, the pure technical skills should be there. Generic academic skills should be there. All the necessary values that are necessary should be there. The socio-emotional life skills, digital skills, financial skills, legal skills, what we say for legal literacy, plus the need for 21st century skills have to come in as a package, and skill development per se has to become more broad-based, more technology, and the skill gap analysis in many sectors have to be really looked at, and education institutions should fill the gaps of yeah, I can see someone putting up over there that in the normal curriculum itself, we should have skill-based skill development as part of that curricula itself. And I think right now we are the fact that we recognize that gap, and now that we are trying to look at the curriculum framework, so the National Skill Qualifications Framework and the National Higher Education Qualifications Framework are being seamlessly merged, and to look at equity, those children who have been children of artisans and craftsmen, the recognition of prior learning is also being factored into the national occupational standards, so that a child of somebody who worked as a car mechanic, you don't have to ask that person to go and start and writing an exam. If the person writes the exam, the person will fail, because that person knows how to handle a problem in the car mechanics. But that skill needs to get a level of certification, so that at a more advanced level, if that has an automated kind of a factory, what is that mechatronics that may be needed for that person is what has to be the additional skills that particular child requires. So I think it's this kind of an approach and multiple models which have to be worked on, and each institution and each individual needs to see what requirements they have. But NEP promotes skilling as part of both school and higher education, and I'm happy that we took this up today in our discussion as a very pertinent topic.
Thank you, ma'am. In fact, there are so many questions, but I think we will take those questions towards end of the discussion. So I'll move to the theme 2, widening digital divide and learning gaps, and our opinion poll. The audience poll gives this ranking. 65% of respondents, they say students lose out in the experience of studying in college and school if you provide online education. 30%, they said yes, students study better in the classroom settings. That is 30%. Then there is no difference. That option gets 0. And remaining 5%, they say students study better through online learning. So only 5% out of 100, they agree with the online learning. And if I add other two options, 65 plus 30, 95%, 30, that is 95%, that in fact is in favor of classroom setting, learning. They don't think online experience is good enough for students to have that real-time experience. Over to you, ma'am.
The apprehension that has come through the poll is in a certain sense quite correct. But I think the reality is that with the current scenario of COVID and what we might have taken about maybe 5 years to reach this kind of webinar that we are doing today, got accelerated because of COVID. There's no doubt about that. The acceleration of technology and the precipitation of using the digital platforms has undoubtedly been a boon or a bane of COVID. Now, with many having said, they all feel that it is a bane, but I would feel that it is a reality that we need to grapple with. And pure online and pure offline, I think that blurring is completely getting, completely blurred. And hybrid models and blended models seem to be the way forward. While the entire health experts are saying that the pandemic may become an endemic, and you might see new variants of it, but we'll start learning how to live with it. While all this is being said, at least in the scenario that we are seeing in the coming 2 or 3 years, the pandemic is there. And the reality is also there that we are living in an age, forgetting the pandemic altogether scenario, removing that situation and looking at a normal scenario. The advent of communication technologies has been a reality, and disruptive technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning and big data, robotics, virtual reality, augmented reality, and so on, are also realities that we need to take into account. Now, while none of us as educators have any minor sense of doubt also, a face-to-face experience in a contiguous situation is the best experience that one can have. But synchronous learning models, even using technology, is possible. What is the hitch there? In a country like ours, which has a huge digital divide, it is the rich and the middle class who can leverage the benefit of synchronous real-time blended learning models. And that is why I'm not sure whether how many of you, maybe I'll share that on the CPPR site. The Center Square Foundation has brought out a report on the use of educational technology and how the benefits of educational technology can enhance many teaching learning experiences, provides quantitatively to a larger number. It can even do micro level teaching, address learning gaps of students, use it for practicals, including parent-teacher meetings that happens in school levels, are all possible. And if it is possible for school education, the audience over here being in the higher education, if that is possible in the school education, it is easily possible in higher education. What has to be done is that, look, so it's not that I'm saying this because I was in the government of India. On January 3rd, when the union minister had announced about the NEET, the National Education Alliance for Technology, 253 crore worth of coupons, allowing students to access online content for the less advantaged and the marginalized, was announced by the union minister, which means that we have seized the fact that there are large sections of the Indian society and students living in hilly regions, running with their mobiles on hilltops and some areas to get the signals of internet connection so that some learning is happening. Now, for them, the kind of online content that has been made available, also in regional languages, because not everybody is doing English medium education, is a very significant factor. And mind you, when you have technology, I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to see IIT Mumbai's spoken tutorials for undergraduate students, where the content by use of machine technology converts to different languages for different language students. So while a class is going on and I am teaching in English and my audience is having students who speak multiple languages with no separate effort, but because of the technology, it is going in multiple languages to the different regional languages that the students want. How could that have been possible? Because of technology. But the digital divide, the lack of institutional preparedness in terms of not having the digital resources, the individual's lack of digital access to digital devices, And also 2 factors: teacher training, absolutely unprepared for online education. And therefore, if I as a teacher, and that is why as a teacher, I should remain a lifelong learner. The need of the 21st century is to be a lifelong learner. As a teacher, I need to reinvent myself. One simple example: why did I think that there should be an audience poll? It is one method in which you actually allow an engagement. Active learning engagement is possible even when using technology. And there are a lot of educational institutions which use flipped classrooms, even in online teaching models. So this audience today who said that that experience can never be achieved have never had the benefit of synchronous real-time learning at all, because you are only seeing a face on the screen. Many others are there, are not actively being used in that online learning experience. But technology, if we are trained as teachers and we start using it, it was in Kerala, there was this teacher who brought an elephant to the room using virtual reality, or rather augmented reality kind of thing. There was no using VR and AR for enriched learning experiences are done by teachers to make classes more interesting. But at the same time, using satellite technology, using offline content, using the radio, community radios, so as to reach out to people who are not able to access, good internet connection is something that, so that is why when we address the need for online learning, I think being seized of the reality and looking at multiple models, and within the same state, say Wayanad region in Kerala, would require a completely different set model than what we might do in Ernakulam or Trivandrum city. Because the urban versus the rural, and within the rural, people who are living in hill regions, who are living by coastal sites, all these actually matter in terms of the penetration. So in Australia or in Indonesia and all that, these are also geographical entities where there is a lot of issues relating to connectivity. And let me also say, the learning loss during the pandemic has been stupendous, and a generation of learners have really suffered because of the pandemic and the immediate moving into the online education without the adequate preparedness for it. Preparedness in terms of the access to devices, preparedness in terms of teachers not knowing how to teach effectively, and also preparedness in terms of parental preparedness. One mobile phone in a family where the parents are working from home, the children are studying, a minimum family of 4 will find that very difficult, and it is a reality for our country. So as far as the economics of it and the digital divide, that is one part of it. But using technology and optimal use of technology to leverage better teaching learning is possible. And we need to say that hybrid models seem to be the way forward. So I fully appreciate that the poll has reflected a concern that yes, we should not be going towards online, but we must also be pragmatic to understand this is how it is going to be. And while there are hardcore academics from various universities who will junk online teaching models altogether, even those coming from open university systems are willing to junk it, we must be ready to face the reality that digital technology platforms have to be used just as we use them for entertainment, just as we use them for many other purposes. Let us also think in terms of using them for educational purposes. But I'm sure we have a question, we have something related to EdTech at a later stage. So I won't touch upon the concerns on EdTech companies. We'll take that up at a later stage. But I think I would urge the audience that innovative solutions are possible using technology. We are not, the audience is not born in this century, I'm sure. There's no less than 21 years sitting in this audience. We are born in the previous century, and we are likely to give a poll result of this kind. But if you had more students of less than 21 years, I think the poll results might have been different. I have to say that because they are children born in the century where internet and the technology was already there in their hands. A 3-year-old will definitely go through the technology, and you and me who are grappling with it. So I think the poll would have been quite different if you had youngsters less than 21-year-olds sitting here. I don't know the demographic profile of our participants, but I think they are all about 21 years of age. And therefore, they are all born in the previous century and not of this century. Therefore, that poll would have come in that manner it came.
Thank you, ma'am. In fact, that leads to a few questions from my side, and also I read out a couple of questions that we share from the participants regarding this theme. I remember presenting a paper, I think 10 years ago in Delhi, on the possibilities that digitization could bring in higher education. And that was a time probably, including me, it was only from a theoretical perspective we were presenting all these ideas. But now it's a reality. So a couple of things that have been discussed in the country for the last 24 months, especially the last 24 months since the arrival of COVID virus. One, it's all about how much we are familiar with these new technology platforms. And it's not about awareness, basically. Some people think that this will also lead to some divide. We can say digital divide in education. And how are we going to address them? And then I read about some of the suggestions that the experts are giving. Government also should take steps to bridge that gap, through other policy measures. Plus, this could also be an enabling tool for, the digital, the lack of equity that is there in the education sector today, because probably you can expect teachers coming from various parts of the world. They could also bring expertise. They could also bring more variety, and they could also bring more experience and exposure to the students in India. And in that context, I have another my question, policy question. Since 2000, I think we have allowed 100% FDI in education. And whatever my understanding of reading and research on this subject tells me that there are many other challenges when you try to implement, or somebody wants to come and invest 100% in education. Your infrastructure, the availability of teachers, what kind of courses you are offering. Do you think the digitization or the possibilities that are opened up because of this particular pandemic is going to address those challenges that were raised when education sector was open for 100% FDI?
I think when we say that, I'm sure all the audience knows that currently in the undergraduate program, earlier the UGC norms stated that 20% of the credits of an undergraduate program can be done through online. And in March 2020, or rather May 2020, the UGC changed that from 20% to 40%. So today, an undergraduate student can acquire 60% credits through face-to-face offline courses in one's own university, because as of now, we have not implemented HEI clusters and so on. And 40% can be through open and distance learning or through MOOCs. Currently, the only platform that we are allowing for Indian students is the Swayam platform. So it is Swayam and Swayam Prabha. Swayam being the digital platform which hosts the online courses, and Swayam Prabha being the one where we are leveraging satellite and therefore the television network. So you have your Gyan Darshan and so many other channels that are beaming educational content right to the homes of the students. We did this in 2020, May 2020, in the light of the COVID pandemic. The precursor to this online courses, many of the audience here may be familiar with the National Program for Technology Enabled Learning, which was started by the IITs and which is even today considered as some of the best YouTube lectures on engineering subjects. So as you mentioned, right from, you said 2000, but I would say right from the last decade of the earlier century, some mid-90s onwards, all the IITs came together and like a consortium, they offered this national program for technology-enabled learning, and engineering colleges, even in Kerala, used to beam those YouTube lectures on core engineering subjects, which were supplemented by the teachers who were teaching the engineering courses. Now, using technology for enhanced teaching learning experiences and using the best globally available teachers. And I'm happy that Kerala had this erudite scholar program and so on, where they used to get the best Nobel laureates and the best minds to speak to their young college students, enthuse the need to widen the horizons of knowledge. And technology can today do that. The amount you would have spent in getting someone traveling to this place and actually delivering and hosting that person for 3 weeks or 3 months or so would have cost an enormous sum of money. A lot of cost cutting has gone because today that person may be speaking, sitting wherever they are in their own geographical spaces using the online platform. Now, quantitatively also, you can reach out to much larger numbers once you use technology. We have webinars where in the closed room, the speakers alone are there. That may be just about less than 50 or 80. But while it is broadcast, you have thousands who are there, which would never have been possible had it not been for the technology. So let us accept that technology has its advantages. Where is the inequity coming in? The inequity comes in by the access to the devices. And that is where, as I said, that not just the government, but also a lot of philanthropic activities, including the corporate sector, needs to come forward in addressing this digital divide. So unfortunately for us, we only think that public investment is the solution to many of our inequities within the society. But the corporate sector also needs to come forward. A lot of NGOs need to come forward. Civil society needs to come forward. And in that sense, addressing localized needs where digital access is an issue has to be looked at in a much broader manner. Now, coming to the FDI part of it, any liberalization brings in a lot of inequities, any liberalization. And when in this policy, we talked about internationalization of higher education also, there were a lot of flags raised, red flags raised on whether we are trying to do a corporatization in such a manner that the less endowed institutions would completely be wiped out of it. Now, any exercise of this kind has to have a moderation. And let us also be conscious that there can be a lot of market forces that operate, which might not take into consideration India's diverse population and diversity of institutions and make a lot of money in a very short time by, using the market economy in a manner that is to their advantage rather than to the larger cause that education is about. So I always believe that when we allow for any FDI in any sector, how many of us today go to a local vendor to buy our produce? Because the FDI in the e-commerce sector has completely wiped out the lower level and the mid-level suppliers and vendors. They are taken over by huge market forces. And the iniquities of that might be emerging in such a manner. You are already seeing that. If you heard Ruchir Sharma the other day, you are seeing the MSME sector and many of these sectors and very low labor force participation. These are all fallouts of it. So in the education sector, when we talk about FDI, and many people accuse the NEP of saying a lot of liberalization and commercialization is being promoted. No, we have not said that. We have said that there will be adequate safeguards to take care of the interests of such institutions which are in the socially, the special education zones areas where access to education is a major concern and where their requirements, ultimately in a country like ours, access even today, Professor Gopakumar was mentioning our GER. And if you do not have the general population accessing higher education, and unless there is a massification of higher education, and massification does not lead to educated unemployed, if it is massified in the right manner, with the right kind of skills and the competencies, you will have a youth population that India is boasting of being a highly productive population to actually achieve what we call becoming a 5 trillion economy. But you have to be creating productive graduates. And that kind of productive graduates may not necessarily come about if we have other drivers that determine the content and the curricula of our higher education courses meant for a global economy, not necessarily suited to India, but maybe to it's like the East India Company running us and where the British have apologized to us. So I don't think we should go on with a colonial kind of a thinking where the divide will happen by allowing opening up of the sector to such an extent without taking into consideration the equity aspects. So I would put it with a pinch of salt, Dr. Dhanu, because India is not yet prepared for it. India is not yet prepared for that kind of opening up of the sector.
Ma'am, I do have some comments and I mean, based on my reading and research, but I do reserve for towards the end of the discussion today. We will move to the theme 3. The theme was multidisciplinary curriculum. And the question was, according to you, is there any advantage of shifting to a multidisciplinary curriculum? So we have 55% of the participants, they said yes, it would promote holistic development. 30% said yes, it would allow students to acquire knowledge in multiple domains. Then 10% said yes, it allows the Indian students to be at par with global higher education. And D, no, traditional system of education is better. So we have 55% commented that it would promote holistic development, and 30% said it would allow students to acquire knowledge in multiple domains. Over to you.
So multidisciplinary education, or what we call liberal arts education, we used a more acceptable term of holistic, integrated, multidisciplinary education. The idea that in the 21st century, we look at knowledge as being a larger domain a larger domain of learning, rather than having single discipline silo-based education, is a growing realization as the need of the hour. It is what we are seeing is that if we do not have this kind of multidisciplinary education, you are putting at risk a generation of learners who will have irrelevant education. Irrelevant because the obsolescence of knowledge or obsolescence of certain skills is a reality because of the dynamism with which changes are taking place. So multidisciplinary education, integrated, amalgamated knowledge, cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary is a requirement of today's learning experience. And we need to think currently the hard differentiation we have of arts specialization, science specialization, commerce specialization, engineering specialization, agriculture specialization. This needs to actually get blurred. The doing away or the blurring of the disciplinary boundaries because of the nature of knowledge itself today becoming a composite one. And on the other hand, the individual's requirement, and here is where in the policy, I just go back to the policy to put in context the unique potential of every child has to be sort of unearthed and leveraged. And therefore, flexibility and customization is the need of the individual, because as each one of us have multiple intelligences. I'm sure when we look at ourselves, we like economics, but you would be interested in maybe a subject of agriculture. You might like to learn a language. You might like a sport. You might like music. We have multiple intelligences. And by creating disciplinary boundaries, we created a hierarchy in the disciplines. We started believing that an engineer or a doctor is better than a teacher, or an engineer or a doctor is better than a scientist or a researcher or a pilot. We started creating an artificial understanding related to only one aspect, where we thought it is only the material acquisition of wealth that determines success. The need to move towards multidisciplinary education, borne out by the fact that many of the innovations and the startups that have become, huge companies today, where the creators of those startups were not necessarily people who were very good engineers or doctors themselves. They may not even have completed their entire undergraduate education for that matter. But in terms of success, they may have been very successful in the world of economy because their companies started building up huge empires. Now, I mentioned earlier that today in organizations and the corporate sector, deep knowledge or I-shaped individuals are needing to be retrained and asked to unlearn what they have learned. So you see the entire IT sector not taking in B.Tech computer science or ECE combination, but taking BSc graduates or taking even non-BSc graduates. Why? Because they feel that an engineering student has to be retrained completely to suit the requirements of the IT sector. Unlearn, making them unlearn and investing a lot into their training. By moving towards multidisciplinary education, what will happen is that student is acquiring knowledge in different disciplines. Some may be cognitive in their own domain area, ranging in sciences or engineering or social sciences or languages or pharmacy or law or music, any of these areas. It could also be that they would learn a lot of other skills, including vocational skills and so on. And depending upon the requirements of the economy, can reinvent the basic concepts and knowledge that they have acquired. So someone who's learned mechanical engineering, and suddenly you find that the Internet of Things is going to take care of the mechatronics of that particular gadget that mechanical engineering is dealing with. If the person did not know the Internet of Things, or does not understand the concept of design, or has very poor communication skills, has very poor collaborative spirit, and therefore teamwork, in the job market, that person is looking at a bleak future ahead. So the multidisciplinary education is not an esoteric idea. It is the crying need of a situation of future skills. It is a crying need of a situation where we do not know what the jobs of tomorrow are going to look like because of the disruptive technologies of artificial intelligence and so on. So by knowing a little bit of many things, and it's not to say they will be jack of all trades, but it would be something for the student to fall back upon, that yes, I learned something in this area also, and therefore that might be good, because the current job profile that I would have if I had only studied pure economics or only social sciences or only engineering or only pharmacy, these could also be changed. Now, that is on one side. The other side is that, as I said, the breadth of having various disciplinary areas would allow companies to leverage on the multiple skills that the student has taken up. So, multidisciplinary education, multidisciplinary curriculum, and teachers are the one who need to actually understand this in the true spirit. As a teacher of education, I will feel that education is the most important discipline to be taught. As a teacher of physics, I would feel that physics is more important than chemistry. And as a teacher of chemistry, I may say inorganic chemistry is better than organic chemistry. This is the narrow, deep specialization which was relevant in the earlier time, which has to be done away with, and understand the importance of all the disciplines to create holistic individuals. So flexibility, customization, and allowing for students to take up this multidisciplinary education. The NEP has, as I said at the beginning, allowed an academic bank of credit, which is a digitized storehouse of credits, where students can acquire credits of different disciplines, not available in the institution he or she has taken admission, by acquiring it from other institutions which are a part of an HEI cluster, and storing that with a facility of leaving entry and exit within a 7-year period of time. The ABC states that it will be for a 7-year period of time, and a student can leave and rejoin, and that is also a part of multidisciplinarity education, because multidisciplinarity without flexibility would be a meaningless attempt at bringing about an undergraduate program. So the multidisciplinary education is not, as I said, something that is idealistic. And if I may say so, the COVID pandemic as an example, it was seen and it came only as a health crisis. And I'm sure all of us sitting here today knows that it is a social crisis, it's a livelihood crisis, it's a mental crisis, and you have all of these being looked at, as well as the fact that technology and education and all these suffer, are all seeing that the approach to handling the pandemic, if you had only health experts, would not have solved many of the other crises that we were dealing with. That means a problem requires a multidisciplinary approach. That problem, one of the problems I just said because it is the most relevant today, but all problems that are there in the world of learning today call for knowledge from various disciplines and domains working together, including skills, including values, and therefore multidisciplinary approach is the way forward. And if we have silo-based education, you are actually doing a grave disservice to our young graduates who will not be able to. And let me also add over here, the utilitarian view of education as education only for employment has to shift to a more widened approach to create a knowledge society, and therefore entrepreneurial skills that need to come in, multidisciplinary, honing research skills that need to come in. All these are equally critical as much as what I said in the first theme, the socio-emotional skills, so that we have young graduates who acquire how to survive in a challenging environment using the resources and the knowledges that they have acquired in their undergraduate program in a continuously evolving lifelong learning process. We cannot say learning stops. If you say so, you are going to become outdated, then you are no longer relevant. Therefore, lifelong learning calls for multidisciplinary approaches to teaching learning. And it is essential that our undergraduate students, and specializations can come in at your doctoral level, but at the undergraduate level, which is the bare common minimum that we are talking about, a multidisciplinary approach has to be incorporated in our higher education institution.
Thank you, ma'am. There is a question from Ritika. Ritika is asking, is it a problem with the way we administered or govern our higher education institutions in India? I mean, I think she is coming to this point of autonomous institutions. The choice and opportunities that this higher education institution should have to design their curriculum, introduce new courses, and also to offer, a wide variety of, probably faculty could also come from various backgrounds. And I mean, my understanding is that it is not possible, or it was not possible in the past. So what do you think, how the system is going to change in the coming years?
No, so I think higher education institutions, I have a completely different take on it. Unfortunately, in our country, autonomy is not a good word. Higher education institutions resist autonomy. That is an unfortunate thing. They are autonomous, but they resist autonomy. They would rather follow the leader and follow directives that are given to them so that they follow strict patterns. We are structured. We are structured in the way we think. So HEIs, they are even now autonomous because you are, as long as you are teaching a content in combination, so the choice-based credit system within a bouquet of courses, you're allowing for a combination of courses. And when you talk of autonomy, because it is not the academic autonomy that's scared of, they are willing to do that. They are worried about the administrative autonomy and the financial autonomy that will follow suit. So they would rather not even go for the academic autonomy. They would rather stick to the rigid systems. But let me tell you that the autonomy or the graded autonomy concept and all which have come in, and where we are saying autonomous colleges can, experiment with many ways in which they can do. There are a lot of colleges, autonomous colleges, which did that. And one must understand that accepting something that an autonomous college offers, that the determinant of that success would depend upon how many of those students got gainful employment after that. So when you experiment with autonomous combination of courses, designing a new curricula, we cannot experiment in a manner that might put the graduate students to a certain risk. But Dr. Dhanu, it is very disheartening to tell you from my own experience of having worked in the ministry, and I'm sure Professor Gopakumar, who is here, will understand that even central universities which enjoy a lot of autonomy are resistant to trying out innovations in new combinations of courses, because they are scared that any experimentation of that kind might result in students coming out and saying that, no, we did a wrong thing by taking up a course of this kind. Therefore, they don't want to take that risk. Follow what is, commonly done, even if it is more of the same, even if those students are unemployed, but at least you are not, held guilty for having experimented and brought out a course which is not having a market value. So I think autonomous, we are already autonomous. How do you use that autonomy to do the right kind of courses would depend upon the risk factor that the academics are willing to take. The risk factor, I think, our Indian ability, we are not risk-taking people at all. And all the more so where we would rather replicate rather than innovate, because we feel that that is the safest way to go for. That is my take on it.
Sure, ma'am. We have a few more questions, but I reserve it for the end of the discussion. We move to the theme number 4. The theme is policy issues, challenges coming up in the sector. So I think the question is asked in the context of growing edtech companies in India. I think we have 6 unicorns now. Last, I think few days back, we have the 6th company become unicorn. And there is also a discussion in the parliament about unicorn companies and then how they are behaving and seducing, if I'm permitted to use the term, they're enticing the market, poor parents, and how they are marginalized, or they are not. I mean, you are selling products in a very not in a very transparent manner. That's what my understanding is. When there are hundreds of cases in various high courts in India against these edtech companies, but unfortunately, media is also not willing to discuss it for obvious reasons. So the question was about what is your view on the booming edtech industry in India? And I think the results are 45% of the respondents said they need to be regulated as standards and quality need to be laid down. So I think it's on the expected lines here. And 25% said they complement formal learning, and 15% each for other 2 options. They provide access to a variety of courses that are not offered as regular courses. The other 15% said they are taking undue advantage and making it a commercial enterprise. Then if I add option number C and option number D, that is 45% said regulation is required, and option D, that is 15% said they're taking undue advantage. That also leads to regulation. I mean, as a result of it. So I think there's a consensus or majority viewpoint is, we need to regulate now. So your comments.
Yes. So let me start saying that it is the market which determines, based on the demand and supply, that companies, flourish the manner they flourish. And the most unregulated sector has been the preschool education, where parents find it very easy to send their children from the safe and scones of their homes to say that they will rattle off the ABCD, the 3-year-old, and 3 years to 6 years kind of age group. So you have a very unregulated preschool education sector. You have an unregulated coaching tuition center, and now you have the unregulated edtech sector. What was the determinant? It was the demand. Now, when you have market forces that determine it, the operator of that sector, who might be working with pure economics of profit making, is least bothered about the consumer's rights and the consumer's actual usage. So the integrity and the ethics of providing that service is the most important one. So the 6 edtech companies, which have now formed a kind of an edtech consortium, when the government said that they will bring about a regulation, that is, bring the government laying down standard operating protocols for quality and standards and ensuring affordability, equity, and all the parameters that are necessary in a democratic society or an egalitarian society, the edtech companies became alarmed, and they themselves said that, okay, we will self-regulate. Right? Is exactly that what has happened. So instead of having external regulation, you started thinking in terms of the self-regulation, which would be done by the companies themselves. But all sectors in other parts of the economy, the telephone, the TRAI, the telecom sector with our call drops and so on in the mobiles, insurance sector, which has come about with IRDA and so on. The rail sector, which has also had its own set of. So every sector where ethics is less and the commercialization starts taking place without the intended goal of providing quality education. In the case of education edtech companies, you will have to have some degree of regulation coming in. And I am happy that the audience, most of them have felt that undue advantage is being taken off. They promise something, they deliver something else. But let me also put the perspective of what educational technology has as an advantage for us. In the light of what we talked in our theme 2 of online learning, if online education is to be provided only by the public sector, currently what we have, Swayam Prabha. And if you have, as opposed to that, you have Unacademy and you have, I really don't want to take names, but all other platforms that are there available for people to choose from. You might start comparing in terms of, okay, NPTEL course or a Swayam Prabha was not very interesting. Here it is customized, it is related to the learning levels of the students and so on. EdTech companies, insofar as they offer enriched teaching learning experiences, address the learning needs of the students, ensure that better learning outcomes are achieved, ensure that they use good quality content, as well as delivery being done by qualified people to deliver that e-content, make it available in regional languages, cater to the differing and the varying needs of the differently abled and those with learning disabilities. They are all ideally working companies as long as the affordability part is taken into account and they do not really cheat on the product being offered. At the same time, making it, ensuring that if you are, it's like the airlines. When we opened it up, the private sector had to operate in those sectors which were not seen as very profitable to make up for the profits that they did in the running sectors. So same way, can EdTech companies look at the equity considerations in a country like India, where, as we mentioned earlier, the huge digital divide needs to be also taken into account. So we had at one time an idea of a 1 laptop per child, an OLPC project, which did not really succeed because it was one size fits all kind of a solution. Here, tech companies may have to think where, I'm not too sure whether about 20 years back, whether you've heard of an institution which promised jobs to all students who did that course from an institution in Delhi. And there was this ponytailed gentleman who promised that the MBA being done by that institution will fetch you jobs which are worth crores and so on. And there are thousands of court cases because the children have been completely fleeced. Neither did that job, that qualification have any validity, nor were their jobs coming the way because they have completed it from there. Same way, if today EdTech companies go in an unregulated manner, dominated by market forces, and where pure trade economics operate, where they come together to only serve individual efforts of amassing wealth rather than providing it as a public good, then there may be a danger of a huge divide that would be created, particularly in the context of the online education becoming a need of the hour and EdTech companies manipulating that situation to their own market advantage. Therefore, quality standards, equity considerations, content in different languages, delivery to suit different learning needs, and addressing the needs of the learning disabilities and the physical disabled, ensuring that they use these, and edtech companies are self-monitored, and you have the oversight of the government, oversight of the stakeholders, then only you will have edtech companies which are, I would say, it is like a lion being tamed or a tiger getting tamed. The edtech companies have also to be tamed in that manner so that they adhere to the principles of fair practice, ensure that the educational objectives and goals are achieved, ensure that teacher training is also a part of that kind of educational delivery, and what they call as customization is based on actual learning competencies of the students. So on one hand, edtech companies are out there to make hay while the sun shines. No doubt about that. But at the same time, the demand for online education also is there for them to make hay while the sun shines. We as consumers, and therefore the consumer awareness and the feeling that, that everyone will be good by doing a package from one particular person's edtech company, I think needs to have some sort of a leveling by some kind conditionalities that need to be put into place. And I think we are in 2022 poised to see not just self-regulation, better consumer awareness, and I think our own educational institutions must spread the word around that there is no harm in doing it, provided you do not land up with a misguided feeling that a student whose intelligence capacity is just about 30% will be able to achieve 80% because of a package taken from an edtech company. False promises of this kind, I think we need to make that awareness in all of us as parents, as teachers, as educational institutions. There is a social responsibility that edtech companies cannot be allowed to run riot in the manner they are. And one reason also, in NEP, we said that from class 6, we will allow children to learn coding and so on. And you think that coding cannot be taught in our regular schools at all. So you think there is an edtech company. If my child went and did that coding course from there, then tomorrow he's going to be a programmer, a software developer. And again, that utilitarian view of monetary success as being the indicator. So I think an edtech cannot substitute the regular education. It should only be there to supplement or complement. And I think we should have our alarm bells in place to ensure that, any such cases of this kind are brought to the, are taken up by the book. And I think we are already recognizing that these companies cannot be allowed to run the way that they are. So while there are advantages of them, while ethics may be there in some of them, I think we also need to be conscious as consumers how much we should allow them to run the way they are running in an unregulated manner.
Thank you, ma'am. We've got 10 more minutes to close the allotted time. I'm going to read out some of the questions and also some comments we received for all these 4 themes. This comment is from Maiden Ramakrishnan. He was an assistant professor at Chinmaya Vishwavidyapith, and he's also a scholar CPPR. He's asking, it's not a question, in fact a comment. Should we ask whether we want to cater more to the job market, or whether we want to lead in knowledge production in an increasingly technocratic world economy? And his comment is, maybe policy needs to cater to both the aspects. No, we can't. I mean, we should be realistic, probably, or we should not ignore the realities around us. That is one comment. Ma'am, you can comment. I mean, you can probably summarize this discussion. I'll just read out a few more comments and questions that we received. Related to that, Mr. K.V. Thomas, he is one of our senior fellows. He says, if higher education turns into a jack of all trades by compounding all disciplines, it may create more issues than solutions. Even if IT giants hire graduates or undergraduates, they only focus on developing the skills or knowledge in line with the requirements of those firms or corporate interests. So he's asking your valuable comments. Then we have for the session, theme 2, we have a question on how do we ensure, I think, even the question is not clear, my understanding is they're asking about the possibilities of conducting online exams, how to avoid plagiarism, how to ensure that the accountability factor is there by students attending these courses online, all those. So, ma'am, can you comment on some of these remarks?
So let me take what K.V. Thomas has asked first, because that's a resounding concern that is coming, that where undergraduate students will learn multiple disciplines, they might really become master of none and jack of all. Frankly speaking, when I talked about this idea of an I-shaped individual and the requirement of a T-shaped individual today, it is a reality that in-depth knowledge might be necessary, like what Nitin had said, for research purposes. But the generic skills required for a T-shaped individual, and therefore, when they learn multiple disciplines, they would not really become like a jack of all the trades. It's only that they know many other disciplines and they're not learning all. Let us be very pragmatic in saying that suppose I take 6 courses in my undergraduate year 1 program, I cannot take more than 6 to 7. I can take 8, but finally the weightage is only given for the 6 kind of a situation. I might not take all the disciplines possible, but the range may be from pure sciences to applied engineering to maybe music to maybe a social science subject or maybe a language, and one more maybe in vocational education. But when I come to the 3rd year, I have to take at least 50 credits in a given discipline so that I major in that discipline. So that majoring requirement at the undergraduate level will force a student to make choices in terms of taking a maximum number of credits in maybe one discipline. Therefore, even today in the multidisciplinary education, this aspect has been taken into account, that we should not allow up to the 3rd and the 4th year this kind of disparate combination of courses. It is only allowed in the 1st year and the 2nd year, but by the time you come to the 3rd year, you are expecting a student to major in a particular discipline, 1 or maybe 2 disciplines, or major in one with 70% of the credits in that and one in a minor subject alone, or maybe do it with a research project. And you're very right in saying that industry trains only for specific skills, and if that technology goes, it does vanish. But it has also said, NASCOM study says that the amount of soft skills training that has to be given to engineering graduates, because our engineering graduates, when we opened up the engineering sector for allowing private engineering institutions, and today you know that these are getting closed down, because if 40% engineers applied for an assistant job in Kerala Public Service Commission, they are not engineers meant to become assistants, which means that there is total unemployability of our engineering graduates. That is a reality that we are looking at. An engineer who does not acquire good marks is just a 12th standard pass, because that student has not had holistic education at all. That is why when we say, while fully being seized of the fact that IT companies are looking at only their narrow requirements, the need for multidisciplinary education is a way to tide over where soft skills, communication skills, collaborative teamwork, scientific temper, problem solving, and activity-based learning with projects will allow students acquire multiple skills, hold them in the job market of tomorrow. So that the multidisciplinarity allows this kind of learning where the teaching learning itself will shift from rote-based learning to looking at project-based activities and giving internships and apprenticeships, so that what is today a crisis or a gap will be taken care of in the multidisciplinary effort. And the other point, that knowledge generation and knowledge production equally is important to just, knowledge dissemination is undoubtedly the NRF is trying to do that part of it, but it was not within the ambit to talk about it, but definitely so that is a need of the hour. And more, we are moving towards a technocratic society. We are moving towards using technology, and therefore those digital skills and technical skills needed for that is equally important. And incubation centers and centers of excellence, startup education, entrepreneurial skills, can we create more innovators? And all these are also simultaneously being focused upon.
Thank you, ma'am, for your insights. And I'm sure, it comes from your experience working with the government and the sector for so many years. It's always a pleasure listening to you. To summarize this conversation, I believe we are going through a change. We are going through a transition now. And whether we like it or not, we have to accept the changes, understand these changes. And of course, like many of these respondents suggested, we need to be very cautious and careful, and we should understand how things are changing, because it's a very fast-moving sector, I believe. It's not only it looks like fast-moving consumer goods. It's also like education is also, emerging as a FMCG kind of, sector. So I believe these market forces and market-driven products, it's also a manifestation of the gaps that are existing. I mean, many studies show that, in the beginning at least, many of these companies were trying to address those gaps, and now they've taken a totally different turn as they realize that there's a huge market potential. That is one. Second, I believe we also have experience in US, UK, and other countries where how they try to address, or how they are trying to address, because I think this is a phenomena in many countries. Something that I learned or read about in recent times was they tried to strengthen data privacy. India government is also discussing data privacy. Of course, the data of the students, data of the parents, whether they should be allowed to, I mean, whether they have the access, not more than allowing it to permission to sell this data. I think the data protection bill should also discuss about the edtech companies and their data storage, and how they are utilizing the data, how they are accessing the data and all. The other one is, I think we should also strengthen Consumer Protection Act. There is a suggestion I keep reading these days, because as we agree, we are also consumers. I mean, our parents are also part of that larger framework of helping their kids to access to education. So we have a right, and consumer education, not consumer education, Consumer Rights Act should be able to address some of these challenges. And then, of course, I think we should ensure equity, efficiency, and effectiveness in this new global order of education. It could be online, it could be offline. I think still we are figuring out how this future is going to be. And I mean, at the same time, I believe what happened in China in the last few months, many are arguing that many of our market forces are going to leverage on the opportunities because of the closure or the intervention in the market by the Chinese government. That could probably lead to emergence of an Indian market that could cater to the global demand education. That also could be discussed in detail probably another time. And finally, I believe there are so many opportunities that we could leverage on in the coming days and coming months. in the education sector. So last but not the least, I also want to discuss something that happened yesterday. This is nothing to do with education sector, but I actually started debating it since yesterday. There was a movie, many of you know, there's a movie, Malayalam movie, where High Court of Kerala said police has to investigate whether this movie should be streamed, should be allowed. How did we give the censor certificate? Okay, the first question was that whether they got the censor certificate or not. Since the movie is released on OTT platform, now they say that they don't require a censor certificate to a great extent. There's a debate on that. Second thing is, and that is more important. Now the police is saying, since it's released on OTT platform, this is only for private consumption, not for public consumption. So I've read a paper in this context. I'm trying to recall the paper, something that I read few months back, when education is given online, whether it is a private good or public good. Because the classic definition of public good in economics at times leads to this debate whether online education is private or public. So with that, I close this session. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your insights, guidance, and mentoring our team in CPPR. Thank you so much. You're always available. In fact, you helped us to curate this event today. Thank you so much for that. And for those who joined this program later, please visit our academy website, www.cppracademy.in. Details are given about the various courses that we hosted in the past and also upcoming courses. At least for next 3 months, you can see the list of courses there. Thank you so much, and over to you, April.
Before April takes over, I just want to sort of put everyone to thinking that education is having a much larger goal of creating a caring society and to also instill the joy of learning. So in each one in our roles that we are looking at, including at the CPPR Academy, the joy of learning has to be brought back from the burden of learning, and that all education is to create a caring society. If we fail to do that, I don't think we will have in the coming century children who will be able to think of others other than themselves. So I'm thankful to CPPR, which is my own fraternity, but I hope we will get a feedback from the participants on this particular session, and that could be shared also. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and all good wishes to Professor Abraham and the CPPR Academy and to Dr. Dhanu, and my special mention to Professor Gopakumar, who sat through this entire program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dhanu sir and Shakila. As the discussions have been summarized so well by Dhanu sir, all that is left for me is to thank our speaker, Dr. Shakila Shamsu, and our participants for such an engaging discussion. You can find all the information related to this discussion on our website, YouTube channel, as well as our social media accounts. With this, I'd like to close today's proceedings. We at the Center for Public Policy Research hope to engage with you in our future programs. Thank you for joining us and have a good evening.
Recording stopped.